morning. How is everyone? Where's my heart?
The sun is shining.
The sun is
It's
shining.
visible. It's not raining.
It was ice on my steps this morning, though.
We have ice on our tower.
Is my heart hero going to join me? I'm going to make the big announcement. I think I'm going to have to have him right here because we're not going to be able to see you. This is my introducing you all to my heart hero. I just wanted to remind everybody that heart disease remains the #1 killer of all Americans and Baltimoreans. So I'm here today to really urge us all to take prevention and care seriously, to get screened today if you've not thought about it. 80% of cardiovascular diseases actually can be prevented. Although heart disease such as stroke, high blood pressure, and heart attacks are preventable, they chronically impact the lives of far too many of our residents. But did you also know that February the 7th through 14th is Congenital Heart Disease Defect Awareness Week? Congenital heart defects are the most common birth defects. 40,000 babies per year in the United States are born with this defect. Of these, 25% will require invasive treatment in their first year. The American Heart Association funds more research than any organization outside of the federal government, and we really thank you for that. The research has helped us to understand and treat this disease so that more children, like my heart hero, get to live longer, healthier lives. Now we'll hear from the American Heart Association's Executive Director, Tracy Brazelton. Tracy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are deeply appreciative of your support of the work of the American Heart Association, and it is because of your commitment to our mission that we're able to continue to raise awareness. As the mayor said, congenital heart disease is the #1 birth defect, affecting about 40,000 children every year. Children like Connor, who was born with multiple CHDs and required invasive treatment very early in his life. But as you can see, he's doing great now. And these are exactly the outcomes that volunteers and donors and supporters of the mission of the American Heart Association make possible. We also are very pleased that during the month of February, our Heart Ball will be taking place here in Baltimore. And many of you know Tony Foreman of Foreman Wolf. Tony said yes to chairing our Heart Ball this year, partly because he himself is a congenital heart disease survivor. And so I think, it really brings it full circle that we see these young lives who have been impacted, but also the adults that they become and the impact they have on our city and on our society. And so we just are, again, deeply appreciative, and we thank you very much for helping us to raise awareness and joining us in being a relentless force for a world of healthier, longer lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Corinne. Before I introduce my next special guest, I wanted to present the Heart Association with this proclamation of February being the period of time in which we focus on this particular disease, one that affects so many people in our city, our state, and our country. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
So now I have this wonderful, wonderful special guest, Connor. How you doing?
Good.
Doing good. Connor's doing really well. His mother, Corinne, is also here with us. He was born with the heart disease. They are the wife and son of our own Baltimore City firefighter. Is Patrick here?
He's not.
Oh, somebody's got to fight those fires. Anyway, so I wanted to present Corinne and Connor with a mayoral salute. And this is for your bravery. And you have something that you're taking around to all the children in the hospitals.
What are we doing with that? We said to hospital kids.
Giving it to the kids in the hospitals.
We didn't do a kids in hospital.
Go ahead and give it.
Is that
Give it
one
to
for
Miss
me?
May. Give them first. Yep.
Thank you.
No.
Any questions?
How old is Connor?
Connor, how old are you?
4.
Sure.
Okay. And you spell your name?
C-O-N-N-O-R.
Thank you.
Did you get that? C-O-N-N-O-R.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. Thank you,
Oh,
Connor.
and could we have your name too, please?
Tracy Brazelton, Tracy, B as in boy, R-A-Z as in zebra, E-L-T-O-N. I'm the executive director of the American Heart Association in Baltimore. Okay. Right. Got
Say
it.
bye to everybody.
Bye.
Tell them have a good day.
That's right.
And
And get your heart checked.
Get the whole set.
right.
Thank you, Connor.
What-
That's
wait, right
yours.
there. That's yours. You want me to hold it? How about I hold it?
Okay.
Right.
Let me remind you all that we have 7 more days of hearings to take place around the city. We're going to 9 police districts. We've had 2, I think, very open discussions with our commissioner around policing in Baltimore. He spent a good hour and 45 minutes or more with community residents, not only sharing a little bit about himself and why he chose to come to Baltimore, but listening to the concerns of the citizens. And I think that those concerns certainly have varied, but I thought very open discussions and very welcoming discussions. And so again, just to remind you all that tonight we're in Southern in Cherry Hill, and Thursday, February the 14th on Valentine's Day, we'll be at Eastern, and February the 15th, the Western District, and February the 19th, Southwest, Southeast on the 20th, and the 21st, Northern, and the 22nd, the Northeast. We also, the City Council has scheduled its hearings on Wednesday, March the 6th at 5 p.m. Okay?
That's the executive one.
Yes. Mhm.
You've been to these two.
Yes. Mhm.
So what do you take away from these as in terms of what is number one concern?
I think among the concerns is creating confidence in the community with the police department, wanting more community engagement. A lot of it referred back to the consent decree and reducing violence. What specific plans does the commissioner have? And what I heard mostly is we want to be a part of the solution. And I just thought it was overwhelmingly focused on community engagement, reducing violence, and then there were some questions around even recruitment and making sure that you were looking inside the city for additional police officers to serve the citizens. And there was also some applause for various police officers that people in the community had gotten to know, especially in this last hearing that we had, public hearing. I think those were most of the concerns I heard.
Has he said to you anything that is surprising to you?
In fact, I think what came across overwhelmingly is that, A, he's very familiar with the issues, certainly because he's coming from New Orleans that is almost in the process of exiting its consent decree. New Orleans, which was at one time considered one of the most dangerous cities in America. He talked about how he had come up. Oh, and the other issue was around corruption in the police department, and wanting to know how he would be able to root out any such thing that may or may not be occurring in the police department. And he talked about his experience and how he worked in a unit that focused on reducing corruption or ridding the department of corruption. That has been part of his experience. There was also some conversations around individuals standing in front of establishments, blocking the entrance way for constituents to be able to patronize certain businesses. Did not saw that as a practice that was accepted in some ways in Baltimore. And I think what the commissioner pointed out was that part of this will take place in training our officers in terms of what they can and cannot do. And I don't know that that's been laid out explicitly for them, but I think what he was able to connect, why he was able to connect with people was because much of what we are experiencing, he's already gone through.
Madam Mayor, can you discuss the shooting at Douglas High and why you did not show up there?
Excuse me?
Douglas High School, why didn't you show up at the
I was
shooting?
there. I was not there in your presence nor with the media because that was not my responsibility. I don't have to be in front of the media every time I show up at places. I go places all day long where you're not.
Mhm.
Madam, did anything come out of Mr. Harrison's discussion with the state's attorney about marijuana arrests?
They had their conversations, and I think you can, as he pointed out to us in conversation, and that is that there's a difference between policy changes and the law. You know, what she's talking about is policy, and the law is the law. But he also talked about training officers to make sure that we understand.
Can he direct the police department to enact a policy that's sort of in line with the state's attorney's policy that won't be grounds for arresting someone?
Let me just say, they had their conversations. I'll wait for the results of their conversation.
Madam Mayor, what does the city get out of you and staff members going to the U.S. Conference of Mayors?
What you got is 42, what you have right now is 42 opportunity zones, more than any other state or city in the country. What you have is the first investment in an opportunity zone over in East Baltimore by Prudential. What you get is additional lighting for our city, and what you get is the camaraderie and the conversations that we have with mayors. Every single mayor stays in the same place. This is the U.S. Conference of Mayors Conference. This is not Catherine Pugh's conference. The U.S. Conference of Mayors invites all of its mayors to engage in conversations at a national level and with each other and to share information. I bring that information back here. You know, I am the chair of the U.S. Census for the U.S. Conference of Mayors and have been able to disseminate information and to create a better road for cities and states throughout the nation to make sure that we're counting every single individual. And all of that information comes from the U.S. Conference of Mayors. You will hear very shortly about a conversation that I had at the U.S. Conference of Mayors that will result in additional monies coming to the city to create more housing opportunities, forgivable loans for individuals who will live in the city. You'll hear that in a very short time as well. But it is certainly an opportunity for us to, as they said at the U.S. Conference of Mayors last year, Enterprise Foundation was a part of the panel. They said mayors across the country should lean in. And so I was able to have a longer conversation, came back immediately, put my team together. We are now 1/3 of the state's opportunity zones. We have 42. If you were to return to the U.S. Conference of Mayors this year, you will see how much we gained as opposed to others who did not lean in.
Lots of residents in Baltimore travel to and from D.C. every day. I mean, why did you need to spend the money on a hotel?
I didn't spend the money. The reality is that every mayor stays there. Every mayor that in this city who has been to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, every January, we all stay there. We've all stayed there for over decades.
Were the rules followed, city rules followed in terms of the spending, in terms of the request for spending?
Yes, let me just say, spent no money on food. I spend no money on food. I buy my own food. The hotel rate is the hotel rate that the U.S. Conference of Mayors negotiated. Any other questions?
Can we talk about trash?
Yes.
So the city council passed the new emissions requirements on the wheelabrator, and I think you said yesterday.
Absolutely.
You will sign the bill.
Yes,
am
I will.
correct?
Yes, I will.
So what happens now, because Wheelabrator has made it pretty clear that they can't comply with these standards.
Well, so here's the issue for the city. This incinerator has been here since 1985. And we have now begun to take in trash from surrounding jurisdictions. This is burning in our city. And I've already begun conversations with my colleagues in other jurisdictions around what we need to be doing. As you well know, that even with the closing, it doesn't happen immediately. There were conversations with the councilman about trying to expand the period of time. in which that facility would close. But at the same time, we have to be concerned about the health and well-being of the citizens of Baltimore. And so whether it is expanding our landfill, when I was in New York, we were talking about what we've begun here in Baltimore, composting and turning that into an economic generator for the city. There are other technologies that are being prepared. Some of them won't be ready in time for this, but we will have to figure it out. And I'm sure that there are other technologies out there that are being developed, and we'll work with them. Thank you all. Good.
What is the cost? There've been a number of different cost
Yeah.
estimates that have floated around.
Mhm.
The more recent one from DPW, which was less than the state's analysts that they presented a year ago for piece of state legislation. If Wheelabrator closes,
Mm-hmm.
what's the best estimate of cost that you can provide to the citizens of Baltimore about the cost impact?
So we do have landfills, and so I don't know whether we go past the 6 years that the other new technology makes available, but we're going to have to move our communities into composting and other methods of taking care of our own waste. The other factor is that, when we remove the other counties from this, which creates a problem for them as well, the cost to Baltimore, taking care of Baltimore's waste will certainly be less. But again, we're working on those numbers, meeting with the finance department currently, and working with DPW. Thank you.